There's something incredible happening in the sax world right now, but you could be forgiven for missing it entirely. Electronic wind instruments, aka digital saxophones, have become massive. I got a reminder of this a few months ago when I released a video reviewing a cheap, no-frills EWI off Amazon, one of the many being sold on there. Now, as fate would have it, the company who made this EWI happened to discontinue it within days of me releasing my video, leading to some rightful confusion and frustration from my audience. But that didn't stop this review from becoming easily one of the most, if not the most successful video I've ever released, amassing over 200,000 views in a little over a week. So should I simply trade in this old pile of junk and go all digital from here on out? No, I'm never gonna do that. But that still does leave a major question. Why are EWIs becoming so popular? And is there a risk that some sax players, especially beginners, could be sabotaging their own sax technique just by practicing on one of these instruments? This video is going to be a must watch, so get comfy and let's dive in. So I ran a poll a couple of weeks ago to my YouTube subscribers asking those who had purchased or were thinking about purchasing an EWI what their primary motivation was. Can you guess the number one answer? Okay. The title card probably gave it away, but it was practicing silently. And I gotta say, it wasn't even close, with nearly 3/4 of respondents choosing this answer. And of course, that brings us to the central dilemma that so many sax players face. How do I practice this instrument I love without annoying the neighbors? Guitarists and keyboard players just have it so easy, don't they? Well, the first, perhaps most obvious solution would be to find some sort of saxophone mute. After all, they work great for brass players, so they should work for us too, right? Well, don't be so sure. The reason why these bell mutes work so well on the trumpet and trombone is because these instruments channel all their air out through the bell. A saxophone, on the other hand, well, it channels its air through its tone holes, which are located up and down the body of the sax. Therefore, putting a mute down the bell of the sax is going to do practically nothing to mute the tone, except for a couple of the very lowest notes. It's a topic that I covered in detail in this video from a few years ago, but unfortunately there's still enough of a misconception out there that these useless sax mutes still get sold widely on Amazon to poor, unsuspecting customers. But fear not, because as it happens, there is one kind of sax mute that does work, although it's also not the kind of contraption most people will get too excited about. These case-style mutes have existed for quite some time, and they work by literally encasing the entire body of the saxophone as you play. They come fitted with armholes, of course, and you can either play with the entire mute around your neck or fit the thing to a stand if the weight and bulkiness becomes too uncomfortable. Make no mistake, these mutes will work to reduce the volume of the sax, but at what cost? So if we can't mute the saxophone itself, at least not easily, and we're not keen on installing a purpose-built practice booth in our house either, that leaves us with just one other option, a new type of sax entirely, a digital sax. Well, that brings us right to our next topic. Are digital saxophones actually saxophones? The short answer is no. The term digital saxophone is just a marketing term to describe a MIDI wind controller, often referred to as an EWI, which have been commercially available since the 1980s. How they work is fairly simple. They register your finger inputs and pair them with your breath input to create a MIDI signal. Your fingerings determine the pitch of the note, whilst your breath determines the attack, duration, and volume of the note. That MIDI signal containing that essential musical information can then be used to drive sounds out of a sound library, turning it into virtually anything you like. A saxophone, a string ensemble, a synthesizer, the list goes on. Make no mistake, EWIs can do some pretty incredible things, and we'll hear some examples of that a little later on. But one thing they can't do is replicate the true feeling of a saxophone. Saxophones, after all, are woodwind instruments, and crucial to the saxophone is the interaction between your embouchure, your mouth shape, and the mouthpiece. How you shape your embouchure and your oral cavity drastically affects how the reed responds to your breath, which determines the sort of buzz that your mouthpiece creates, which in turn affects the tone and the intonation of your saxophone. This is something that no manufacturer has yet been able to replicate in an EWI, making it impossible to use one of these instruments to practice your embouchure. Yes, even the digital saxophones that look a bit like real saxophones with brass bells and real sax keywork or look-alike sax mouthpieces, even those don't scratch the surface of replicating the feel of a real saxophone. Believe me when I say that's not just my opinion, it's a plain fact. Can that lead to some bad habits being formed? Absolutely, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But it's here where the brands themselves have quite a bit to answer for, because they're doing everything they can to convince you that the EWI is in fact the perfect stand-in for a saxophone if you want to practice silently. Just take a look at these statements from Roland about their Aerophone line. The sound of the saxophone has captivated music lovers of all ages, and many people would love to play one, although it's not always easy. Noise levels make it difficult to practice at home, particularly at night, and staying motivated is hard when your practice time is limited or you can't find a place to play. Roland's Aerophone Go is a digital wind instrument that solves all of these problems. At least Roland does stop short of trying to convince you that their instrument feels and responds as if you were playing an acoustic instrument. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for Yamaha. Let's hear their pitch for the YDS 150. Blowing into the mouthpiece resonates through the entire instrument, a vibration you can feel in your lips, your fingertips, and even your heart. An integrated bell acoustic system created by the fusion of acoustic and digital technology delivers an incredibly authentic, gorgeous sound that even feels and responds as if you were playing an acoustic instrument. A claim that Jay Metcalf completely blew out of the water during his review on the Better Sax channel. With wild claims such as this by some really trusted brands in the industry, as well as online stores flogging saxophone mutes which they know can't possibly work by design, it's no wonder that beginners are left bewildered by what their options are for silent practice, if there actually are any. Now, of course, there might be some people watching right now that think I'm being a little bit harsh towards digital saxophones. As long as we're aware of their limitations, what if there actually can be a place for digital saxes in a saxophone player's practice arsenal? Well, let's find out. As a professional sax player and teacher for almost 20 years, I sometimes have to take a second to just put myself back in the shoes of a beginner. Make no mistake, mastering your embouchure is absolutely key to playing the saxophone. But alongside that are also a range of other important skills that you'll also need to develop. Things like reading sheet music, playing rhythms accurately, learning fingerings, reading pitches. All of these aspects of playing the saxophone also require your attention. And perhaps it's here where a digital sax can really shine. To dig in more, I invited Saxtuition student Brody to chat about his experience using the travel sax alongside his real saxophone and how that helped him to both practice silently and still take his sax practice on the road when he was traveling for his job.
What this can do is give you the opportunity to play completely silently. Once it hit 7:30 and I wanted to respect everyone around me, being able to pull one of these out and be able to keep playing for as long as I wanted gave me that opportunity to keep on going, whereas otherwise I would have felt inclined to stop. Especially with this one, the size doesn't really compare to a real sax, even if it was a soprano. At the very least, the position of the keys are all relatively the same. So you can make that logical leap. The key difference I found is my embouchure and being able to produce a tone. There's nothing that can really compare to having a mouthpiece with a reed. If you don't get that right on a real sax, then the sound all falls apart.
Did you get any bad habits from playing the digital sax?
Yeah, I can definitely say I've picked up some bad habits. Quite often when I am playing the travel sax, I tend to get a little bit lazy and I'm not focused on my embouchure. So there's no conscious thought about trying to be in the right position or use the right technique. Whenever I go away for a little bit of time and I am playing on the travel sax, my brain can keep up with the fingering and stuff like that when I get back. But after a bit of playing, like my jaw and my mouth and everything just tenses up and gets really sore because I've lost that conditioning. The best thing about the travel sax for me is literally the size. Like if you wanted to, you could even take off this mouthpiece here and play directly into that. So you're looking at something that is tiny. Like fits in a backpack. You can play it on the train, you can play it on a plane, just about anywhere.
Quick plug here, guys. Having a portable instrument is only half the solution to being able to practice on the go. If you really want to learn the saxophone on your schedule, whenever or wherever that is, you also need to take your lessons with you. And that's where the courses over at saxtuition.com really come in handy. If you're starting the sax from scratch and you want to learn all of the essential techniques like every note across the normal range, how to get a great tone, and how to read sheet music effortlessly, check out the Sax Tuition Beginner Series, which will teach you all of this and more in only 12 lessons. Or if you've got the basics down pat already and you're stuck in that frustrating zone we sometimes call the intermediate trap, check out my latest course, Supercharged Saxophone. You'll unlock advanced techniques like overtones and altissimo, and most importantly of all, play great jazz, blues and R&B tunes with a live band. If either of those courses sound right for you, I'll leave links with more information in the description below, or you can simply head on over to www.saxtuition.com. Now, I know from the stats that most people watching this video are clearly not looking to use an EWI as a performance tool, but I couldn't make a video about EWIs without sharing what I think is still at the heart of these instruments, what inventor Niall Steiner had in mind when he designed the EWI in the late 70s and early 80s. Remember, the 70s was an incredible time for music production, and synthesizers were at the forefront of this revolution, creating some wild and unearthly sounds that frankly no one had heard before. Of course, it was only a matter of time before woodwind players wanted in on the action too, and one in particular who was arguably the single most important proponent of this instrument, none other than Michael Brecker. Let's take a listen to Brecker in action on the EWI. Now, casual observers could be forgiven for thinking that the EWI simply had its day already. But in fact, even now, saxophone artists from all over the world are continuing to perform and record on this instrument and look for ways to harness its full sonic potential. Let's listen to Australian-based saxophonist and my personal friend Gemma Farrell talk about her journey on the EWI and also some of the incredible music that's being made on this instrument even today.
This is our third album. And yeah, I compose for the band and obviously play the saxophone in it, as well as this instrument, which is the electronic wind instrument. I was first drawn to play the EWI by the recording of Michael Brecker's original Rays, which is on his first album. When I moved overseas to study at the Conservatorium van Amsterdam, I met Itai Wiseman, who is a fantastic EWI player. He created a course for woodwind specialists who were master's students to be able to learn the EWI. When I moved back to Perth, my EWI playing got put on hold a little bit because I was having children and trying to make money here. But I decided to study the EWI for my PhD. One of my favourite EWI albums is Michael Brecker's playing on Steps Ahead, live in Tokyo 1986. That's probably my favourite EWI album. And other EWI players you want to check out, as well as Itai Wiseman, are his teacher, Ellie Bennicott. You also want to check out Steve Tavoloni, who was really good friends with Michael Brecker and had a great group called Dog Cheese. He still plays EWI today in lots of the Pixar films and most films with scores by Thomas Newman. My instrument here is an instrument by Bergland Instruments based in Sweden, and one of the most common questions I get is it weird for me to play like this with my hands parallel, but my left hand and right hand behave the same way no matter what.
And by the way, if you're interested in checking out Gemma's latest album, Electronic, which features the EWI throughout, I'll put a link in the description below. So until now, I've not really shared too many of my personal thoughts on the EWI, so here they are. If you're an absolute beginner and you want to learn the saxophone silently, the EWI is not a perfect solution, despite what some companies will tell you. But the truth is, there is no perfect solution. The saxophone by design was never meant to be muted. So if you do want to use an EWI for silent practice, make sure you're aware of its limitations and that you regularly check in with a real sax to ensure that you're still developing your embouchure and breath support as you go along. In terms of the specific models to look out for, I would just try to get something that has the closest key layout and ergonomic feel to a real sax that you possibly can. On the more affordable end of the scale, you've got the Yamaha YDS 120, which in many ways is a superior instrument to the more expensive 150, and the Roland Aerophone Go. Each of these instruments will set you back around $500 US. For a couple hundred more, you can look at the ultra portable Travel Sax 2, or for the ultimate replication of saxophone ergonomics, the Emio, which features real saxophone parts, springs, rods, pads, and all. That instrument will set you back around $1,500 US. Of course, this is all to say nothing of the dozens of low-cost EWIs currently flooding Amazon. In my review of the Van Gogh S55, an EWI you could pick up at one time for only $66, I remarked that while you could never use this simple instrument as a practice tool, it was a fun and inexpensive way to dip your toes in the MIDI waters and just go wild with experimentation. Plus, if you count yourself as a MIDI composer and you needed a breath sensor to breathe some life into your orchestrations, this inexpensive little EWI could do that job for you, potentially saving you many hundreds of dollars. Now, with all the renewed interest in EWIs, I hope newcomers to the sax world take a moment to really understand how these instruments work and what their capabilities and limitations truly are. Plus, this is also a great opportunity to dive into the often overlooked world of EWI performance. With all the movies and TV show soundtracks out there that feature the EWI, chances are these little known instruments have been right under your nose for a very long time. So, what's your experience of EWIs been like? Or do you have a burning question which wasn't answered in this video? Make sure to leave those thoughts and questions in the comment section down below. Now, you want to check out that review of this ultra budget Amazon EWI? Well, you can watch that right here. Or are you new to the saxophone world and wondering what you need to know about the saxophone before you start your first lesson? You're going to want to check out this video over here. Well, thanks so much for watching, guys, and of course, I'll see you all again soon.